It's kind of like that I Love Lucy episode, and you see here on the next slide where she's struggling to keep up with wrapping the chocolates because life is just coming at her so fast these days that it can really feel chaotic. And it can be challenging to keep up with everything that we are going through. I mean, if you think about what we've all endured as a global society in the last almost 3 years. So here's the interesting thing that a lot of people don't know. Even prior to the COVID pandemic, we had been living in a VUCA world. And I'm going to explain what this acronym means. VUCA is an acronym that is used to describe the characteristics of war in Afghanistan. And it's now being used by behavioral economists to describe life in our modern society, which basically means that we are living in war-like conditions, or at least our brain registers it in the same way. And remember, this was even before the pandemic. So this acronym, and I'll walk you through each one here: V for volatility, U for uncertainty, C for complexity, and A for ambiguity. It's a modern world where the pace of change is the fastest it has ever been. And I'm here to tell you, don't shoot the messenger, the slowest it will ever be. Where as leaders, we're forced to make decisions and act without not really having all the information or the resources that we need. I'm sure you can relate to that. Or we're faced with constantly having to juggle multiple factors and to make decisions at a pace that frankly is overwhelming our thinking processes, right? And our clients often share that sometimes I feel like I don't even have time to think. And I'm sure you might agree with that as well. So we're constantly being faced with unfamiliar circumstances that are forcing us outside of our comfort zone. Case in point with the pandemic. And I'm curious to hear from you. You can jump into the chat and share your experiences of which one of these or how many of these would you say that you experience on a regular basis? Now, each of these factors, I have to say, have been present in our modern work environments for a while now, right? But what's important about VUCA is the combination of all of these factors, right? It's the combination of these factors which have created the perfect storm of chronic stress, inner turmoil, and chaos. And I'm seeing your responses. Jessica said VUCA, all of the above. Daryl said complexity and ambiguity. So yeah, you can start to see how these factors are impacting even your life. Cheryl says, I can relate to UNC specifically. So yeah, this is a way for us to just contextualize characteristically what we are experiencing and why it is that we're feeling the stress and overwhelm that we are all enduring. And so what I want to do is examine, well, what is the impact of all of this from a brain science perspective? Because if we understand this, then we will have more agency and power in doing something about the way that we are experiencing the moment. So I'm going to walk you through some animated animation here on this slide. From a brain science perspective, when we experience these high levels of stress, chronic stress at that, our brain registers danger and threat. So physical threat, like worrying if you or your loved one will get sick, for example, or social threat, like the uncertainty or loss of autonomy during the lockdown, for example. And what's really interesting is that the brain registers both physical threat and social threat in the same way, right? So all of these experiences that we've had because of the pandemic, loss of autonomy, uncertainty, our brain is registering that in the same way that it would if we were about to be hit by a car, right? And when the brain registers threat, we fall into fear. Fear of getting sick, fear of death, fear of failure, fear of losing a loved one, fear of losing our job, fear that our lives will change in some way. And there are multiple forms of fear, but when we fall into fear, this creates reactivity. And this is what I want you to self-reflect on for a moment. how much of this might be true for you, right? This reactivity in our way of thinking, in our way of being. So, for example, lashing out on a loved one, road rage, grasping for a sense of control. For those of you who might manage and lead teams, we might find ourselves micromanaging the team. Some of us may even find ourselves playing small. Or some of us, we try to play hero for everyone, and we're always jumping in, trying to rescue things and problem solve, and we burn ourselves out in the process. Other examples may include lashing out in an email. You ever sent an email and later on you reread the email when you're in a different emotional state and you're thinking, I probably shouldn't have said it that way. I probably could have said that a little bit differently. But you are in an emotional reactive state, and that's the challenge of the moment that we're in. But that's also where we have agency. If we can understand how our reactivity is expressing itself, that is where we have agency, because we may not be able to change all of what's happening around us. But what we can take command of is how we experience the moment and how we respond to what is happening. So we get stressed and we essentially lose our cool. And Alex says reactive versus proactive, or reactive versus responding. So one of the things that we know from mindfulness is that it allows us to become more response able.